Welcome to Modern Code Lab. In this video, we will be talking about the difference between orchestration versus choreography. We'll also talk about these things in a very detailed manner, taking real world examples and also the use cases that you're already familiar with. So let's get into this. We'll just take a simple scenario of an order placement, right? You might be using some applications like Swiggy, Zomato, Big Basket, etc. Like when you're placing any order, the restaurants confirm and then the delivery partner will be picking it up. So for each and every step, you'll be getting notifications, right? When you're placing an order, you'll be get notified. When the restaurant picks it up and when the order is processing, you'll be getting a notification. And finally, when the delivery partner is picking it up, you'll be getting a notification. So for each and every step, you will be notified, right? So when you're discussing about this scenario, when you're imagining this, we just need to question ourselves about two things. Is there any centralized system controlling everything? Or are these services are just talking to each other independently? So these are the two questions that we need to question ourselves, that is there any centralized system or they are just talking to each other independently? Based on these questions only, we will be able to understand the difference between orchestration versus choreography. Now, so most developers, while developing any kind of an application or else any software, they'll just directly jump into microservices, leaving the monolith away. But the real problem actually starts after that. When you're dealing with microservices, we need to actually define, like, how do these services communicate each other and who decides what happens next. And the critical part when we are dealing with microservices is that how do you handle failures, right? So these are the actual questions that you need to assume or is we need to define when you're dealing with microservices. Now, let's go to the topic, like what is orchestration? Think of an orchestration as like a conductor in an orchestra. There is one central brain, okay, like the conductor that I've said in this example, who will be just managing the musicians, right? He tells everyone to do what, like in what bass, in what phase you need to just play the instruments and etc. Right? So when it comes to microservices, it tells the central brain actually tells every service what to do, step by step, one after the other, like what happens next, which service will call the next service, and how does the functionality goes shifts from one services to the another service, etc. All these things is controlled by a particular thing called as orchestration. Now, let's just take a simple example of an order processing system. Let's say you're building an e-commerce system, right? So you have some multiple microservices, like for example, order service, payment service, inventory service, and also the shipping service. The order service will be creating the order, then it goes to the payment service. The payment service will be processing the payment. The inventory service will be updating the stock, updating the inventory and etc. And the shipping service will be just taking care of the delivery of that particular product, right? So this is a quite simple example that we are just assuming, okay, to understand what orchestration means by just taking these examples like order service, payment service, inventory service, and shipping service. Now, when it comes to orchestration in this particular flow, there is a central order orchestration that controls everything so that the flow becomes the orchestrator. Like whenever the user is placing an order, the orchestrator will be taken that order and it will call the payment service to handle payment. And if there is a success happens when it comes in the payment, it calls the inventory service to do the inventory management. And if it success, then it goes to the shipping service, which will be taking care of the delivery of that particular product. If any of this process fails, it also triggers the rollback, right? So orchestration is like it is controlling everything, whatever the microservices that you have created. Okay. So the centralized thing is controlled by an orchestrator, right? So this is the basic definition and the basic understanding of orchestration means. Now, what happens in the backend? Like how do you handle orchestration? So what are the tools that we need to take care of when you're dealing with orchestration in microservices? The workflow and also the tools like the popular tools like Temporal and FX Conductor and also AWS step functions are popularly used when it comes to orchestration, which are mainly used in the backend, right? Now, what are the advantages of orchestration? Like if you are just thinking about the scenarios and the examples that we have followed right now, okay, based on that, we will be able to understand, we will be able to think that it is very easy to understand. Like I said, like each and every service is handled by a particular centralized thing, which will tell each and every service to do what. So the flow becomes very easy for us to understand, right? And it is a centralized control as we discussed, and it is very easier to debug when we are defining a particular flow. Okay. So based on that, if you are having any kind of an issues, so it is very easy to understand, like it is a step-by-step process. So we'll just easy to recognize that at what step it is breaking, at what step there is an issue raising up and etc. And it is very good for complex workflows, right? We'll also just look into some examples. We'll just take some features or else any application development, okay, in which we'll be understanding at what places we need to use orchestration and at what places we need to use choreography, right? Now, at every point, there are also some disadvantages as well. Like, so what are those disadvantages when you're dealing with orchestration? There are tight coupling, okay, to orchestrator, right? So like everything is managed under one thing, okay. So and it can lead to a single point of failure also if you're not designing it properly. And it is very hard to scale independently. Like whenever you are adding a new service or else when you're doing anything new, okay, it will be very hard to scale at a massive level, right? And there is less flexible. If it is not scale, it is also less flexible at the same point, right? Now, what is a choreography? Right, when compared to, we have just understood about orchestration till now, let's dive into what is actually choreography. So there is no central brain and there is no conductor, just the services reacting to events, just like a dance, right? So there is no one to control to everything, right? So once you understand everything, once you understand the flow, once you understand the moves, okay, you will just dance on your own. So there is no central brain or else there will be no conductor to manage you while you're performing anything, right? So now, let's take the same example of an order processing system. Okay, instead of central orchestrator, okay, each of these services will be dealing with some events. So basically, the very first service that we have discussed is like the order service. Instead of the orchestrator giving anything to the order service, okay, the order service itself, when it receives an order from the user, it itself emits order created, which is an event, okay. And the other services, okay, the payment service, inventory service, or as the shipping services, okay, it will be listening to those events. So I said the order service, when it emits order created, the payment service listens and it processes the payment, right? It will just trigger in functionality. And if it is success, it emits payment completed. And this payment completed will be listened by the inventory service, okay, and it will be updating the stock in the inventory. And also emits another event called as like inventory updated or else inventory reserved. And after that, when it listens, the shipping service, when it listens, it ships the order. It goes to the different flow of the product delivery and etc. So as you can see, when it comes to orchestrator, there is a centralized flow of a particular thing that is controlled by a particular person or else a particular like code that is written, okay, to control all these services. But when it comes to choreography, these individual services are just talking to each other and they talk to each other based on some events. So it is totally even based, right? I think you are familiar with some things like that I'm saying here right now. And nobody is controlling the flow. Just services are just reacting, okay, based on its functionality, right? Now, what is this looks like when it comes to the backend? Like if I'm talking about event systems, like you'll immediately think about Kafka, and you'll be immediately thinking about RabbitMQ, message queues, and also Amazon SNS, right? Each service subscribes and publishes events. So this is the actual flow that happens when you're dealing with the choreography in microservices, especially in the backend, right? Now, let's discuss about the advantages also. So it is very loose coupling compared to like orchestration. It is very tightly coupled. So there is some centralized thing that will control everything. So it is very tight coupled. But when it comes to choreography, it is very loosely coupled. So each service has its own functionality to perform. So there is no dependency and everything. And it is very highly scalable. Like you can immediately add some new service and you can just immediately scale everything. And when it comes to the development, each developer will be assigned with some microservice, okay, which is very easy for us to take care of that entire process, right? And it is very better for evolving systems. So like when you're dealing with some complex projects, some complex scalability projects, then it is very easy to use choreography, right? Now, what are the disadvantages when using choreography? So it is very hard to debug, right? When you're dealing with microservices, especially choreography. So as the microservices are dealing asynchronously, it is very hard for us to debug. And there are hidden dependencies in every microservice. And also even chaos is not designed properly. Like when it comes to this event processing, like if you're not designing those events, like at what event, like what functionality it should be triggered, right? So if you're not designing it properly, so it becomes entire chaos. So you need to define the event properly when it comes to the microservices, right? And it is very complex failure when it comes to the error handling. So as I said, it is very asynchronous. It is very hard for us to debug between these distributed systems, right? Now, let's just simplify in this thing about orchestration and choreography in a detailed manner, right? So just think about orchestration is like control level, right? There is a centralized system, is just controlling everything. When it comes to choreography, it is just event driven. Like each service will be emitting some event and the other services will be reacting for those events. That's it. So this is the simplest form of understanding orchestration and choreography, control driven and event driven, right? Now, the most important part of any application or else any software development is failures. How do you handle failures? In orchestration, you implement Saga pattern, okay, which is a centralized pattern, okay, which will be taking care of each and every error handling in each of the services that are implemented. Orchestration will actually handles rollback also. Example, like if the payment success and if the inventory fails, orchestration immediately triggers a refund. Okay. And next, when it comes to choreography, each service handles compensation. As we discussed, that each and every microservice is designing with based off some events. Suppose if the order service is taken saying that order processed, so it will be listened by the payment service and it says that it will be processing the payment, right? Now, if the payment service is triggering an event, if it is emitting an event of payment fail, right? So what the other services need to do? They have to get rollback, right? So whatever the order that has been created or else whatever the order that has been taken by the order service, if the payment service has failed, the order service has to update the status in that particular service saying that this order creation has been failed or because the payment has been not successfully happened. As we discussed in the previous example, if the order service is taking an order from the user and it emits an event called order triggered, right, order created, and the payment service will be taking that event and it will be processing the payment. If the payment is completed, the inventory service will be taking those events from the payment completed and it will be updating the inventory, right? If the inventory is updation fails, if it is emitting an event of fail, the payment service has to listen to that and immediately it has to trigger a refund for the user, right? So it basically deals with all the events. You have the success events and also you have the failed events. So no one is there to control. Each and every service has to compensate based on events only. So you are just relying on the event consistency. That's simple. That's all. Now let's take some real world use cases. Like if you're developing any applications, okay, so what kind of applications need what kind of methodologies? Like what should be used, either orchestration or else choreography? When you're developing an e-commerce application like the payment, inventory, and shipping, where these things are very, very important, you have to use orchestration because you need strict control on each and every service and each and every functionality. And rollback is doesn't matter. Rollback definitely matters when it comes to these particular processes. And business logic is very linear. Once the payment is confirmed, then only it goes to the inventory. When the inventory is getting updated, then only it goes to the shipment, right? So there is a linear logic when it comes to handling these kind of applications, right? And next, coming to the another project called as like analytics pipeline. When you're designing an application where you need to find the analytics. Now let's take another example of analytics pipeline, right? Popular applications like Cloudflare, Google Analytics will be just taking care of the user events, right? So whenever the user clicks, it triggers an events, it will process them and it will be just storing them in a dashboard so that the user will be able to see, or as the business owners can be see like how the users are responding on this particular application, right? In that particular kind of a development, you need to use choreography because it is very highly scalable and you will be having many consumers. Like if you are using any kind of an application where there user base is very high, so at that place you need to use choreography. And there is no strict sequence. Like there is no control of each and every click. There is no need there is no need of controlling each and every event, right? So there is no strict sequence so that you can use choreography. Now, when it comes to the different example, like the payment systems, if you are developing, right? Most systems use hybrid, like orchestrations for transaction flow and choreography for notifications and logging, etc. So like these are the real world use cases that you just imagine, okay, when you're dealing with choreography and orchestration, right? So thank you for watching this video. I hope you understood everything that I have discussed about orchestration and choreography. So please do like, share and subscribe. And if you have any doubts or else if you have any suggestions, please do mention in the comments. It actually helps me to improve a lot. So thank you. Thank you for watching.